in the dailies this morning. We begin with the Daily Nation, and this is what is captured on the very front page of the Daily Nation, which indeed was actually our main investigative story yesterday on NTV as well. NHIF heist, rogue hospitals exposed. Using the name of the National Health Insurance Fund, NHIF, men and women disguised as healthcare providers preached false hope to elderly villages, promising to rescue them from the depths of arthritis complications. But 8 months later, the villagers are in anguish and tears as they recount the resultant disabilities and even deaths. Meanwhile, some health facilities minted millions through claims to the national insurer in a scheme that reeks of collusion and scandal. That's on the full pages 6 and 7 of the Daily Nation. We'll get to that in a moment and just try and tell you what it's all about. Let me actually just get to that story so that we can get a full picture of what it's all about. It's one of our biggest investigative stories so far. And there you have it. It's a story by Ibrahim Karanja and Masi Chelangat. About 8 months ago, you had a sleepy village in a couple of sleepy villages in Meru County who received wolves in sheep's clothing, they say. Using the name of the National Health Insurance Fund, that is NHIF, these men and women disguised as healthcare providers preached false hope to the villagers, promising to rescue them from the depths of arthritis complications. Now, all they had to do was dress up, carry their NHIF cards and travel free of charge to certain health facilities in Nairobi County where they would receive free medical services. Now, months have passed since then, leaving the residents of the rural county in anguish and tears, recounting the resultant disabilities and even deaths that has now occurred. And they've talked to a couple of people there. You have a gentleman called Mwebia who says he's a widower who recalls how his village was mobilized to attend that free arthritis medical camp at Nkubu Stadium in October 2022. These visitors were asked to produce their NHIF cards, and those with other medical cards were turned away. They were then asked to explain the symptoms before being advised to get x-rays. The gentleman was told to find a medical facility to have his back x-rayed and then share the results. He ignored the call. However, his wife was advised to visit a private medical facility in Chuka for the same purpose, and in fact a vehicle was provided to transport her and others free of the charge. Back at the camp, she was told she needed an operation. She would later travel to Nairobi free of charge in a vehicle provided by those camp officials. And the story goes on to tell you how that scheme took place. That's not the only person who got into that and was a victim of this particular scandal. There are many who gave their account of exactly what happened. So you can find this full report on the Daily Nation, and you can also find the full report in video that we had prepared for you in terms of a story at ntvkenya.co.ke. All right, so what else do we have? Well, pass finance bill to allow me to fix Uhuru's economic mess. Ruto urges members of parliament. Yesterday, President William Ruto in that picture, together with Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi. You can also see Kakamega Governor Ferdinand Baraza, who are attending a church service in Kakamega town. Now, the head of state, President William Ruto, is pleading with members of parliament to pass the controversial Finance Bill 2023 to enable him raise money to fix the economy mess the country is in. He was speaking yesterday. He says, the 9 trillion debt borrowed by the previous government had put the country in a difficult economic situation. There's a figure here, 3.68 trillion. That's President William Ruto's total budget for the 2023-2024 financial year. MPs will this week vote for the finance bill. Will it be tomorrow? We'll get more details on that and let you know if the finance bill will be on the third reading tomorrow. And what else do we have? Inside Parliament's 6-point plan to bring down the cost of electricity on the second page of Daily Nation. Members of Parliament are exploring at least 6 ways of addressing the high cost of electricity and taming independent power producers who have been blamed for the high cost of power. The National Assembly Committee on Energy is set to start investigating the high cost of electricity and present a report to the House within 120 days. Now, among the ways being explored by the committee include not renewing any contracts of the IPPs currently in place, Parliament's involvement of signing contracts with IPPs, and also the payment payment of IPPs using local currency. So you can get that full report there just at a glance. That's exactly what we expect as the National Assembly on Energy begins investigating the high cost of electricity in the country. Also, 2 KDF soldiers killed in Lamu Al-Shabaab attacks. These soldiers were killed yesterday while responding to an attack on a general service unit team whose vehicle had earlier ran over an improvised explosive device at Mlima Wafaru. That's in on the Witu Pandanguo Road. That's in Lamu County. And several GSC officers operating under the multi-agency security operation Amani Boni, while on patrol in that area, drove over the IED suspected to have been planted on the road by Al-Shabaab militants. This was confirmed by the military's chief strategic communications, Brigadier Zipora Kioko, who said the KDF troops stationed in the area had responded by moving to secure the area and recover the wounded. So that's what we have on that particular report. Let's see what else we do have here. Kenyan Indians, a story of struggle and triumph. That's a few years ago, the government formally recognized Asian Kenyans as the 44th tribe. India and Kenya have this month been marking separate feats, while Nairobi commemorated 60 years of internal self-rule. New Delhi is celebrating 75 years of independence from British rule. Yet, in spite of the distance between them, a fabric has been woven, linking them for more than 120 years. And on Tuesday, the community of Indians whose families arrived in Kenya in the 19th century gathered in Nairobi to discuss how their Indian ancestry has fueled the industry and unity in Kenya. Okay, what else do we have here? Kenya set to host top regional nuclear safety conference. It's a regional experts who are meeting in Nairobi starting today to discuss safety in the use of radiation and nuclear technologies. The week-long forum brings together representatives from 22 countries and resource persons from the International Atomic Energy Agency. It's convened by IAEA and the Kenya Regulatory Authority, that is KNRA, and is expected actually to come up with resolutions that will help boost research, education, as well as public sensitization around the applications of nuclear energy in health, security, and energy. So this is quite an important forum here that is happening in Nairobi. Also, allow me to fix Uhuru's economic mess. Ruto urges opposition members of parliament. We saw that on the front page of the Daily Nation. That's President William Ruto is now pleading with the members of parliament to pass that bill. He was speaking in Kakamega yesterday, and he said, and I quote, some political parties, referring to the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya, are writing letters to MPs instructing them not to support the finance bill. While you, members of parliament, are reading the letters, I would like to ask you if you have read letters from those who have voted for you. So that's another debate and, you know, very interesting that will be happening in the National Assembly as the finance bill now goes to the third reading. Either tomorrow or the next day, we have to get a full, you know, confirmation on the day that we'll be having that. Also, this is a developing story. Odwol ouster trial starts on Wednesday. The impeachment hearing of Siaya Deputy Governor William Odwol will begin on Wednesday, with the official set to know his fate on Friday. In a schedule released by the 11-member special committee, the Siaya County Assembly will be the first to appear before the panel on Wednesday to make their submissions. Both sides have prepared the councils ahead of the hearings amid reports of intense lobbying. Even though the Senate has vowed to ensure justice prevails, the special committee met on Thursday last week immediately after its formation and settled on Elgeyo Marakwet Senator William Kisang as the chairperson, deputized by nominated Senator Betty Montet. All right, so that's what is happening so far. Wamushamba says, I will not be intimidated by states' threats. That's the Githunguri Member of Parliament, Gathoni Wamushamba, who maintains that she will shoot down amendments to the contentious Finance Bill 2023 tomorrow, should they fail to address the needs of Kenyans in courts. Wamushamba last week voted against the bill, saying any amendment passed must address the plight of Kenyans, citing scraping some of the proposed taxes, which she said are punitive and exploitative. All right, and we have just taken a look at this report here. And what else do we have? revealed that hakahola victims were buried with the state's permission. Well, some of Paul Mackenzie's followers were buried with the knowledge of the state. It has emerged. Well, Nation has obtained a burial permit dated the 28th of January, serial number 172246, which was issued by one Evans Syria, and which bears the signature of the then Makongeni Assistant Chief Raymond Charo, who's now the chief of the Chakama location. However, Nation could not independently verify who Evans Syria was and whether he was related to Silas Omondi Otieno or if they are the same person. Silas Omondi had written a letter requesting a permit to bury his wife, Zilpa Odoyo Mwande. The letter, which was dated 28th of 2022, read, and I quote, "Mimi Bwana Silas ninathibitisha kwamba Zilpa ni mke wangu na kwamba mnamo usiku wa leo saa 7 usiku ameaga dunia katika kijiji cha Shakahola, Makongeni. Kwa hiari yangu nimeamua kumzika leo tarehe 28 hapa nyumbani bila kuenda mochari ndani ya masaa 24. Wako mwaminifu Silas Otieno." And so it goes on to give you details. You can read that report and see the interpretation of what that letter was all about. But this is another story that continues to unravel. Security officials who appeared before the Senate committee refused to discuss the Hakahola issue in detail, where the same issue of the state giving burial permits to Mackenzie was raised during the public hearings. It's a controversy that continues to unravel. Meanwhile, the subsidized fertilizer farmers do not want. Well, just over 1 million out of the 3 million farmers have purchased the inputs, but only 1 in 3 farmers targeted in a subsidized fertilizer program by the president's government took the low-cost farm input. Latest statistics from the Ministry of Agriculture indicate that a little more than 1 million out of the targeted 3 million farmers have purchased the low-cost fertilizer almost 2 months after farmers in key maize growing zones conclude this season's planting season. An estimated 1.72 million bags of planting fertilizer and 1.3 million bags of top dressing fertilizer have been purchased by farmers in the maize, potatoes, coffee, horticulture and sugarcane subsectors. Some 3.2 farmers registering for the government subsidized fertilizer targeting the food basket counties, but so far majority of them are yet to redeem their vouchers. All right, so that's what's happening in the agriculture sector. And also still on the same, High Court has halted a multi-billion shilling KTDA fertilizer as the High Court in Kericho, which has stepped in to stop the procurement of a multi-billion shilling fertilizer from Russia by the Kenya Tea Development Authority. Justice Joseph Sergon issued the orders after SLDR International Limited, that's a local company, challenged the tender for the supply of the more than 90,000 metric tons of the chemical compound fertilizer for the year 2023 in a petition filed in court and supported by affidavits. Okay, let's wind up on the Nation now. Let's see what else we have on Business Daily. And this is what we have. Supreme Court's Moyland ruling sends banks into panic. Well, banks holding thousands of title deeds as collateral for loans have been thrown into a panic after a landmark Supreme Court ruling that handed back to the public a parcel of land that had changed hands several times from the late President Daniel Arap Moi since 1989. The country's apex court in April said not even the passage of over 30 years could stop grabbed public land that had undergone multiple successions in private hands reverting back to the public, which means the ruling, which also raised the bar on the level of due diligence required from buyers and the need to comply with the land acquisition process, looks set to impact banks holding such title deeds as securities for loans worth billions of shillings. You can get that full report here on the Business Daily. Meanwhile, still there, let's see on the sidelines of the Business Daily, what else do we have? Kenya Kwanza to spend 7 trillion on debt payments in the next 5 years. That's the administration of President William Ruto, which has budgeted that 7 trillion shillings to pay its debt in its first term in office from the financial year starting 1st of July, highlighting the debt burden inherited from the previous regimes. You can get that report on page 24 of the Business Daily. I think that's 2 to 4, I think. Yes. Now, KenGen eyes Tanzania geothermal deals. That's the Kenya Electricity General Company, KenGen, which is eyeing drilling deals in Tanzania in what looks set to cement the firm as a leading geothermal power company across the continent. And let's see what's down here. Kenyans braced for tough July as Ruto taxes take effect. Now, small businesses, social media influencers and top earners will be among the first to be hit by the new taxes in 2 weeks, coinciding with the period that fuel will also start attracting higher taxes. The new taxes in the finance bill have 3 effective dates: July 1st, September 1st, and January 2024. But the Kenya Kwanza administration has put the effective dates of most taxes next month as it eyes money to fund the 3.68 trillion budget. Small businesses with annual sales revenues of between 1 million to 25 will from July pay a 3% turnover tax, being a rise from the current 1% charged on those with gross sales of between 1 to 50 million. Also, social media influencers, such as those advertising brands, will also start paying 5% withholding tax on their gross revenue earned in respect to digital content creation. And also set for July is a doubling of the value-added tax on petroleum from 8% to 16% in a move that will send pump prices of petrol, diesel and kerosene to a record high. Let's see on Taifa Leo just very briefly as well. On Taifa Leo, this is what is captured. And Raila asiwatishe. Rais awashauri wanasiasa waliokosa kufuata maagizo ya Odinga ya kupinga mswada tata wakae imara. And goes on to say, waliokiuka maagizo, kinara ODM ametishia kuwaadhibu wabunge 28 waliomkaidi kwa kupigia mswada wa fedha kura ya ndio au kuhepa. Now, you can see the pictures are over there. You can see Esther Parsaris, Nairobi Women Representative, John Badi. You can see Babu Owino, Gideon Ochanda, Otiende Amolo, Christopher Seka, and all right, so Tindi Mwale as well there. You can see these are the names, at least a couple of the names that now have been threatened by the ODM party for failing to turn up or actually voting yes in the finance bill when it came up in Parliament last week. All right, so there you have it. That's the full report. That's the second page of Taifa Leo. Ushuru Raila ni moto wa karatasi adai Ruto, and serikali yasema lengo si kuwapa mahasla nyumba bali ajira ya 1 million. Okay, so we're going to leave it at that as we take a look at East African. This is what we have on the front page. Regionally, it's tough times. East African citizens are bracing for hardship as states impose punitive fiscal measures to implement ambitious budgets amid dwindling household incomes. Pages 4 to 5 that captures everything that you need to know on the region when it comes to the economic matters. Professor Njuguna Ndungu there, the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury. You have Dr. Kishemba, who's the Minister for Finance and Planning in Tanzania, Matia Kasaja, the Minister of Finance in Uganda, as well as Dr. Uziel, Minister for Finance and Economic Planning, that is in Rwanda. And you can see some of the budgets that have been set aside by some of the other East African states as well, and how you'll get to understand how these taxes are going to be taking effect in those different countries in the region. Ramaphosa Group also facing challenge in a peace quest explosion rocking Kyiv as African leaders led by South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa and Azali Assoumani, the African Union chairperson and president of Comoros, arrived in Ukraine as part of an African peace mission. That's on page 10 of the East African. All right, and lastly but not least, just having a quick look on the Standard here. We don't have it on the monitor, but this is just basically what it does capture in the Standard. Taxes showdown or Ruto walkover. President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga mobilizing legislators for an epic fight tomorrow in Parliament to approve or reject the finance bill. Will Ruto win in the House but face demos as Azimio warned? That is a question. And activists are now suing Parliament over poaching. Well, 12 petitioners want the court to determine whether members of Parliament can leave coalitions that supported them in elections, and whether the Speaker should be a member or a supporter of a political formation. In the matter to be heard today, they also want IEBC to declare seats of defectors. The Governor, Andrew Mwadime, 9 executives have been summoned by the Assembly to shed light on how $4 million was set aside for the commemoration of World War I was spent in March this year. All right, so we wind up on the paper right now. We're going to take a short break in a moment, but when we come back, we will be having a conversation on issues of drug and substance abuse in the country. Where are we right now? And of course, we will be trying to understand what are some of the issues, the emerging trends, and what the government is doing to help in this fight. All right, so we're going to have that break. When we come back, we'll get right into the conversation, and I'll be introducing my panelists after that.
Step into a world where sustainability meets prosperity at the Wheat Expo. Join us in Eldoret on June 29th to 30th, 2023 at the Central Primary Grounds opposite Zion Mall. Discover sustainable wheat cultivation and indulge in interactive sessions. Our farmers balance innovation and tradition to grow nutritious wheat. To partner with us by way of exhibition and advertising, contact Christopher on 0723 401 003. Let's cultivate a healthier, wealthier nation. Embrace sustainable farming at the Wheat Expo.
Through polio, I graduated to disability. So they associated it with a curse, bad omen.
I was raised by a single mother because my father ran away.
Vile nilingia Nairobi, kila mtu alinikataa kwa sababu ya ulemavu. Wanaona wewe mimi ni mlemavu, mimi mzigo kwa hakuna kitu nitafanya.
We celebrate this group of extraordinary dads and recognize the unique role they play in the family setup.
Getting a child with albinism, I have to protect this child because I don't want her to feel the pain that I've gone through.
The way I parent my children, they will end up appreciating and respecting persons with a disability because they have a dad with a disability.
PWDs, we must come out clearly and boldly and tell the society, look at me as a person.
Madani.
Mimi siwezi kuacha ujinga.
Hebu nimeshutiwa bana.
Lazima tuashike tena. Kuna majamaa wametekufa kwangu na mtoi kwa keja.
Leo ni wewe, kesho ni mimi. Sawa, siwezi kosa kukusaidia.
How do you keep your toilets clean?
I use normal detergent and bleach for washing.
The detergent and bleach cleanless can leave behind yellowness, rust, and germs. Harpic's 10 times better cleaning compared to regular detergents and bleach, and kills 99.9% illness-causing germs in your toilet, including the COVID-19 virus.
I see you've decided to go to a clinic in Israel so no one gets in your way, am I right? You're getting pregnant there, are you? I wonder who the father would be.
That's none of your business.
Actually, it is.
That's a crime, you know. It's a crime. Don't you even see how serious this is?
Misha, throw her out of the room.
Please, at least you could be. I'm begging you, Anna, leave us. Go away.
Your tears don't affect me anymore. You'd better get out.
No way, Dennis.
I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's over.
Bluebird peanut butter, made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with Bluebird peanut butter. Available in 200 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Buy a pack today.
In life, you could be eager to be employed or be self-employed. Either way, you do need the right skills. This is the point where Goodwall is essential to you. Goodwall is a professional social media platform that offers you earning and learning opportunities. It offers you great chances to grow in your career, learn new skills, showcase your existing skills, network with like-minded people, or get job opportunities. Nation Media Group, in partnership with Goodwall, aim at providing solutions to unemployed African youth, creating digital content that inspires young people to stretch themselves and get the right skills that are useful to employers and their peers. So, how can you be part of this? Every month, we'll give you a chance to win $150 through our monthly challenge. Anyone can participate. Just look out for the challenges on NTV Kenya's social media platforms. Join the challenge now.
Hello, come on, sweetheart.
You like calling me late at night?
Because I'm a busy man, and you know I have to hustle for you, baby.
Then promise me this time you will marry me. You know it's been 6 years of dating.
I will marry you soon. You know I am building our future here in Japan.
Aye, but sinilona stories zako uko Nairobi.
That is editing, baby. You know I'm an editor.
Baba Fanuel, unaongea na nani kwa simu sahi saa 8 na mimi ni bibi yako? Haya.
Calm down, mama watoto.
To get Baba Fanuel Flatty, dial star 812 star 807 hash. Skiza, non-nation.
All right, welcome back to the program. You're watching AM Live on NTV. Now, a recently published national survey report by the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse, that's NACADA, notes that 1 in 6 Kenyans aged between 15 and 65 is projected to abuse at least one drug or substance. The 5-year survey reported that 1 in every 8 Kenyans aged between the same 15 to 65 years are said to be alcoholic, with Western region having the highest prevalence at 23.8%, followed by Coast region at 13.9% and Central at 12.8%. Now, we are going to be now diving much deeper into that conversation, trying to understand the issues of why we are where we are and if those numbers have changed over the past 5 years when we had the last report that was done by NACADA. And now joining me in studio to have this conversation is, on my immediate left, is Professor John Muteti, who is the acting CEO of NACADA. Very good morning to you, Prof. Good to see you. Welcome to the show. And of course, we have Paul Kirungu, who is a counseling psychologist and also addiction professional, and is also a trainer in peer recovery support. A very good morning. Good to see you as well.
Good morning.
Indeed. And David Ogot, not a new face here on NTV as well, who's a recovering alcoholic, will be telling us about your journey and at least, you know, give us insights of exactly how this, you know, fight has been for you. All right. So I want us to begin with, first of all, Prof, let me just get, you know, insights from you on some of the key findings from this particular report that was published mid last month, I believe. Yeah. Just what are some of the key findings that are a bit concerning for you as an organization?
Thank you, Zainabu. This report, it's actually a survey which we usually carry after every 5 years, a national survey. And we usually intend to get the status of alcohol and drug abuse, you know, in the country, because this is supposed to inform programming, you know, the programs we undertake and possibly the strategies we are supposed to use to fight this menace on alcohol and drug abuse. So we do other surveys other than the national survey, but because of course the national survey carries the whole country, it gives us a better view of what is happening around the country. Now, the latest survey, which was launched in May, shows that alcohol is actually extensively abused. And we have counties, as you have mentioned, and other regions, like Western region, which we found is actually doing very badly with 23.8% of the population actually taking alcohol, abusing alcohol, followed by Central with 12.8%, and regions like Nairobi with 12.1%. So it really gives a grim picture of what is happening. You know, other than alcohol, we also have other drugs which are being abused. We have tobacco, for example. We have cannabis. We have heroin.
So tobacco in the form of cigarettes, or tobacco in different forms?
In different forms. You know, tobacco, you know, you sniff, you take by mouth, you are taking tobacco through shisha, you know, different kinds of ways of taking in tobacco. So we've studied, the study shows, you know, the different kinds of levels which are being abused, you know, these tobacco products. We also have cannabis, we have heroin, and even prescription drugs, which we are supposed to go and be prescribed by a doctor, but somehow, you know, people get them and they misuse them.
And we'll get to the issue of the age as well, because it appears that even really young people are really getting into, you know, alcohol and drug abuse. But David, you know, first of all, before we even get into, you know, the issues at hand, give us an, you know, experience, your journey of how it began for you, you know, your recovery. How long have you been in recovery so far? How did you get to that point where you became an alcoholic?
Thank you, Zainab. Basically, this is my 23rd year.
Wow.
But we say it's a day at a time,
right,
because of the issue of relapse, which essentially becomes 1 second shadow.
Right.
I often tell my patients, today I am talking to you to try and help you help yourself. But I tell the families, tomorrow, your person will be sitting in this chair asking me, David, what happened? Then I say, oh, this, and I just found myself drinking. But essentially, I started when I was in first form, because I couldn't talk to girls, as I've often said.
Wow.
You know, I've always been a very loud fellow. But when, you know, like when you're in primary school, you know, boys play with boys and girls are a bother, like my sister, the last born, I'm the first born, we were 4. And suddenly when you get to that age, like first form, 12, 13, of course, you start getting attracted to the opposite sex, and nobody's talked to me about how to, you know, approach. So we're going out, you've gone to a school debate with a girls' school, afterwards there's some sodas and a dance, and you can't, you know, I get tongue-tied, everything I'd planned to say disappears. So I'm asking my buddies, you know, how comes you guys are very comfortable with girls and whatever, and me, I just get stuck. And literally, that's the only place I couldn't converse. So they said, no, remember when we were starting to smoke and drink alcohol, you said you're a goody-goody. My father said alcohol is for adults, and if you smoke cigarettes, you'll get cancer and die, and I don't want to die. So that's why, because girls like tough guys, and, you know, bad boys, guys who break the rules. So the easiest way, you start smoking and drinking alcohol. So I kept holding out, but by the time now I'm going towards second form, because like you go for a dance and there's something called floater's corner. Floater's corner is basically where guys are on this side, the ones who are not on the floor dancing, and girls are on the other side. So you're floating, you don't have a partner. So, you know, as the song is ending, you're saying, okay, let me go and, at the end of this song, let me go and ask that girl. So you keep going, and then you say the next song and the next song, and then the dance is over. And then the girls are laughing at you, who are the floaters, etc. So before I went to second form, I started stealing my dad's alcohol whenever he was out of town. And my dad traveled a lot. He was working for the UN.
So you gave in to the pressure?
I gave in to the pressure. And actually, the first time I actually started with cigarettes in the school, in the field. So the first time, of course, I puffed a lot of coughing, but by the end of the week, I had mastered it. And of course, everything you're watching, the movies, everything is showing you, always the hero smokes and drinks alcohol, actually drinks spirits.
So there was a lot of influence.
There's all around, there's the influence. So, but the first time now I tried the alcohol, I actually spat it out, beer, because it really tasted bad. But then I kept forcing myself, feeling nauseous, puking, etc. And by the time I actually went to Form 2, I could actually drink 2 beers. And the first, and these guys who had started earlier than me, many of them were like on 1 beer, maybe a couple were on 2 beers. Now me, I'm a latecomer, but I've started on 2. And then in a very short time, because of something we call tolerance, where you need more of the drug to feel the same effect,
right.
I was very soon top of the heap. And you know, like now when we're all drinking and we're all smoking, now it becomes who can drink the most and who can smoke the most. So though I started late, in a very short time I was at the top of the heap. And then I was in a boarding school, Lenana. So at the end of the day, as this tolerance goes up, in the beginning it's not a problem, but by the time I get to Form 3, I'm stealing to get money for alcohol. I now need to drink during the term, where previously I would drink when we got a pass out during some weekends or we've gone for a function. Now I want to start drinking, so we start drinking changa, because we used to go across, it was called across the fence,
right.
to the Kijiji to buy food and whatever. So sometimes we felt the food is not enough. So we started drinking changa, because the prefects by this time, and the seniors are already drinking changa. So it's at this point now my marks started going down and a lot of craziness.
So by that time, you've
yes.
gotten into the depths of addiction.
Yes.
At that point.
Yes.
And then things now start taking
things now start going south.
All right.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to that. Now, when I look at this particular report, Paul, and like Prof had said, so alcohol, first of all, remains the most abused drug in Kenya,
Yes.
According to this report. Why do you think alcohol is at the top? Are there influences? Why do you think this is a big problem?
I would thank you very much, Zainab. I would say partly it's because of culture. We have been oriented to a culture that alcohol is a drink that needs to be there in most of our social occasions. When we want to appreciate people, there's alcohol, even in our traditions. And alcohol is looked at as a lesser drug. Actually, many people think that alcohol is not a drug, because I've heard many people say, I am a very lucky parent because my son or my daughter does not abuse drugs.
Right.
She only drinks alcohol. Even when you look at religion. For me, I was raised as a Catholic, and I'm actually a Catholic. On Sunday, if you are lucky, you can get an opportunity to sip the altar wine, which we take as the blood of Jesus. And even when you look at the Bible, there are many instances where you find people drinking alcohol. We have Noah, who used to have vineyards for making alcohol. The first miracle, Jesus converted water into wine, and people drank, and it is said they were very happy. We have Saint Timothy being told by St. Paul, be taking a little wine because it's good for his health. It's a perception.
I mean, yeah.
That alcohol is not so much of a bad drug. Even at home, when we want to celebrate, even in families where people do not drink alcohol as much, during festivities like Christmas, you'll find people are allowed to drink alcohol. My father never used to drink alcohol, my mother, the same thing. But over Christmas, they would allow some of my brothers to drink alcohol.
And in fact, I want to, if I'm not wrong, you can also correct me on this. You are also in recovery.
Yes, I'm also,
I think 10 years in recovery as well. So
18,
you also,
actually
18 years?
18 years
wow,
in recovery.
Right.
18 years in recovery. Yes, and like David, peer pressure is a very big issue, especially if you have low self-esteem and you don't know how to be assertive to say no to your peers. And therefore, when you are given a drug, you don't want to be seen like you're the mommy's boy, that you're chickening. So you've got to do what the other boys are doing. So
you need to man up.
Yeah, so you smoke weed because that's what the tough guys do. You smoke tobacco. And then I also used to drink alcohol. For 18 years, I was informed to when I started smoking, of course, cannabis and tobacco. And then in higher school, we used to have A-levels. That's because my parents were not there. Now I learned on how to drink alcohol, and it got me very bad. But my the worst part of my drinking was the years between 2002 and 2005. For 3 years, I smoked and drank and did nothing else from morning to evening, anytime. And in the last stages, I developed psychotic symptoms. I was hallucinating. I was being chased by wild animals. I used to have a person who would play a guitar to me for telling me about the events that were to happen to me. I was shown how I was going to die.
So your mental state completely shifted because of the state that you were in?
Yes, I was totally out of touch with what was happening. And eventually, my sister intervened, and I found myself in a treatment center. It was not voluntary, but at the treatment center, I was introduced to someone who was the chairman of the recovering community, who sat down with me and he shared about his experiences. And that was triggered, that is what triggered me to make a decision that I really wanted to get well. And I stayed there for a duration of 3 months. Then I went for training. And then that was how I found myself
so that was your turning point?
Yes, that was the turning point, the psychotic symptoms. And then I was at the end of the road. I didn't have anywhere else to turn. Actually, I was thinking of suicide at the time because I also didn't know what was happening at the time. I was not aware about that. Whatever I was going through was because of the drugs that I was taking. I thought that I had been bewitched. And therefore, there were other forces that were fighting me. And there was no redemption. But eventually, it came in the form of treatment.
And we'll come back to the issue of even support, really. You know, many people who suffer through this don't get the support that they need. And also the issue of the stigmatization that they also face. But what I've gotten from you too, Prof, if you've heard, is you know, both David and both Paul started, you know, taking alcohol and, you know, cigarettes, you know, I believe cigarettes as well. You were also smoking cigarettes, I believe, in high school. Form 1, Form 2, that's quite at such a young age, quite tender. So then this speaks of the issue of accessibility to these particular, you know, drugs. You have alcohol, which is quite accessible, and even right now more so, might be even worse because, look, a young person just has a phone. There's so many applications right now on the phone. There are e-commerce platforms that sell, you know, alcohol so easily. So just talk to us about how this has changed or shifted you know, the way that we work around fighting alcoholism in the country, you know, because it's so out there, it's so accessible.
Yeah. Thank you, Zainabu. As Paul and David have alluded, actually the question of accessibility and affordability plays a big role because you find that what is happening is children as young as 6 years have access to tobacco. And the access is actually even at their own place. The father is smoking. The father sends the kid for you know, a cigarette. Go and bring me a cigarette. As the father is you know, smoking, the kid looks at it as cool. So they will start smoking. They go and take beer, you know, alcohol in their homes. The alcohol is in the fridge. The kid is obviously going to have a taste of such. So the issue of parenting is also important because kids will look upon their parents as role models. And I think that is why you find that the challenge must be actually solved right from the parent and from the community. We find that a lot of what is happening is also fueled by the internet, information out there, where a kid can actually order a drug over the internet. You know, if you can buy, you know, alcohol or whatever drug over the internet, then the person who is selling the other side doesn't know the age of this person. So a kid is low, you know, of age as 15 years, 10 years, they can order. And these online sales actually have contributed a lot to this problem. So we are saying we must look at this, we have a fresh look at these laws, so that we do not have our youth completely, you know, immersed in this issue of alcohol and drug abuse. And we must also be caring parents. Let's not leave our kids just to the teachers, you know, because there is that tendency that, you know, they will be the teachers, this is the job of the teachers. It's not the job of the teachers. It is our job. Actually, as NACADA,
it's a communal responsibility.
It's a communal responsibility. And the community must take its rightful place in this war against alcohol and drug abuse. The community must, because when we were growing up, the community was very responsible. Everybody was a parent to the kids. These days, it is just your mother and father or your relatives. And you know, for this country to prosper really, we must have a sober and healthy nation. And actually, as NACADA, we are saying we want everybody to think of this country and to have a sober and healthy nation. Even you've heard our president, our deputy president, they are very passionate about this issue, because even the agenda being driven by the government, that is the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, is saying that we must have people who are going to work, and you cannot work if you are sober, not sober, if you are not healthy. So this is something which the government is very serious about, and it's something which we must do something about.
David, how easy was it for you to just quickly go to a shop nearby and perhaps get, you know, alcohol? How was it? Was it easy for you?
Actually, as Prof is saying, and it is something I've been saying since I've been doing awareness, in my time, and I was also A-levels like Paul, if you walked into a bar as a kid, the nearest adult would box your ears and ask you, where are you going? Or I'm coming to look for my dad or my uncle. Okay, where is he? Wait outside. But today, kids walk into a bar in broad daylight, in school uniform, and they're sold alcohol, and everybody says, I can't touch somebody's child. So that communal thing, because while be boxing your child's ears, where I'm seeing them, you are boxing my child's ears somewhere. So all the adults communally were in charge. But we could still get alcohol. Of course, like you'd send an adult. Some of us were tall and, you know, had deep voices, etc. So you'd pass yourself off because those were the days, even when you were going for movies, there were movies rated adults only, you know. So you'd go and whatever. But, and as Paul is saying, it's the society. You're happy, cheers. We drink, like now Safari Rally is coming. At the end, champagne, alcohol, the winners. You are sad, you drink, you see. And then also, people don't take alcohol as a drug.
Glorified.
It's glorified.
Right.
It is glorified, it has been glorified, it is still glorified.
But the best way to celebrate good occasions, if you want to, you know, hang out with your friends, that you must have some sort of, you know, drug, perhaps alcohol, which is at the top.
It's that alcohol and tobacco is not taken as drugs. You see, your prof was saying earlier, you know, and I've heard even people saying, me, I don't take drugs. I only smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. When we're even doing workshops, we're asking people, is tobacco a drug? And they say no. So, and we ask them, so, okay, when you don't smoke for like 2 hours, what do you feel? This. And the heroin guy, what does he feel? And the cocaine guy, and etc.
So we're meant to think that drugs are what we know as the narcotic drugs, which is heroin, cocaine. Those are the drugs. Otherwise, these are not
these
drugs.
are not. They are what we call socially acceptable.
Right.
You see? And actually, the world is actually divided, the whole world, all the countries are actually divided into wet and dry. Wet is where alcohol is available and socially acceptable, example, Kenya. Dry is where it is not easily available, it's not socially acceptable, e.g. Saudi Arabia. Again, the religion comes in, because Catholics, as he's saying, I'm Anglican, but Holy Communion. And then you hear everybody quoting, but if this thing is so bad, why did Jesus turn water
into wine.
And I like quoting, and Timothy, again, take a little alcohol for thine stomach's sake, and so on. So it's, you know, everybody wants to talk about, no, heroin, whatever, but leave our alcohol and cigarettes alone. And again, if you look at it logically, cigarettes, tobacco, kills more people worldwide every year than alcohol, all the illegal drugs, prescription drugs, road accidents, HIV-related, and one other, and I always forget, combined.
Right.
But it's illegal. So you then wonder, you know, Miraa is legal here, it's illegal in Tanzania.
Right.
So who makes the regulations? Again, it's us. So if your industry is big enough, for example, tobacco was chased from Uganda, then they came here. So we usually say, like, if you're a smoker is basically, you know, a cigarette is a fire on one side and a fool on the other. Because if it is used as prescribed by the manufacturer, it should kill you. So where is the logic in, you know, even we say tobacco control, what? Then why don't we have heroin control, cocaine control? Because you're going to use it, it's going to addict you, most probably it's going to kill you.
Right.
So is there underage? You know, you can make a case for underage drinking, overage. Where is the...
But it's a very thin
where
line.
we say for tobacco. Because tobacco at any age, again, I'm saying they should put on the packet. If you use this as per instructions, which means smoke it.
Do you think the communication on the packets have any effect or impact on people purchasing cigarettes? I mean, for example, and just any other form of tobacco, perhaps when you see, you know, they've put pictures of people with, you know, perhaps black lungs and all these things. Does it have any impact, this kind of communication?
Now,
the warning signs.
Civil society, we've pushed. Before it used to say Ministry of Health, warning, cigarettes are dangerous to your health.
Right.
So people used to say, that's Ministry of Health, Minikosao. Then we pushed for the pictures. But if you look at the pictures, they're not even clear. Even us who are the people who pushed, Paul and Nakada, all this, pushed for this, if you look, because the tobacco lobby is so powerful, and actually they're still in court on some of these issues. So again, we need to look at how much, and if you check Nakada surveys from previously and the Ministry of Health, the amount of tax government gets from tobacco, at one point, I don't have the most recent figures, but at one point government was spending 3 times more. For every shilling you were spending 3 shillings on mopping up cancer, blah, blah, blah. And of course, there's loss of, you know, the human resource. What is a country's wealth? It's the human resource. If it is sickly, as Prof was saying, or it's dying.
It completely affects everything.
Yeah. And then how much money goes, people are being taken for operations, and you are dying.
So you're spending all this money to ensure the health of your, you know,
to keep me alive community. For just 1 extra day.
Right. And this thing is still legal.
And it's still legal.
Right. So it's a big counter.
And people take it that it's not a drug. As Paul was saying, you smoke. I don't smoke weed. That's illegal. I don't take cocaine, heroin, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then prescription drugs are not even being looked at. Media, you have done so many programs on even cough mixers, cough syrup, etc., etc.
Right.
Being used and bought. How are certain drugs, even prescription, sold? And they're meant to be prescription, but you just walk into a shop and buy them. So availability is even before internet. Internet has just made it much worse.
But it was there.
It was there, all over.
Right.
All over. If and see if heroin was essentially, things like heroin, narcotics were essentially Coast and Nairobi. Like here we run a drop-in center in Gara and Kangware, which is free for members of the public. Initially it was for narcotics only. Now, what happens? These are now in Central, they're in Western, they're in Kisumu. Narcotics are now everywhere. What is happening? Because by the time I was leaving rehab, I think Nakada was about 3 months or 4 months old, something like that. Paul, we've worked with Paul before from very long time back. He knows there was very little. I think it was just NACADA, and it was just NACADA. Even Ministry of Health didn't have really proper programs. I think that's why NACADA was put. Now today there's NACADA, there's Ministry of Health, there's so many institutions, there's so many NGOs, there's so many rehabs. And the simple question I asked when I left rehab, because my background is media, so I did an article, actually in Nation.
Right.
My first article was in Nation. What is alcoholism? Now today, with all the money, all the organizations which are now fighting, which were not there when I left rehab in 2001, if you ask that question today, there is more confusion than when I wrote that article in Nation in 2001, February or March.
Okay.
So what is not getting...
Why isn't the impact effective, you're asking?
To the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me hear from Paul on the same, but I want to tap your your expertise in terms of counseling people, and especially trying to understand the psychological factors that really contribute to the development of addiction. Maybe you can give us insights on that.
So before I come there, I think I will want to add something to what
of course, yes,
David was contributing. I think the problem, the core of the problem is attitude, especially the messages that are being given to young people. Not just what we are saying, but what the society is doing. Because you did talk about the glorification of drug use culture, that you walk into matatos and you find all these pictures of Pablo Escobar, the other people who have been...
it looks fancy. You
yes,
see
it does.
your celebrities holding a cigar.
Yes.
And it looks very, very cool. I guess so that attracts young people.
Yes, it does. And even when you look at the leadership, you find there are many people who are using these drugs. Of course, you have mentioned about the celebrities. And even we know of some media people who also drinking.
No, but I mean actors. When I mean celebrities, I mean people when you watch on TV.
Yes.
Music videos, perhaps.
Yes.
And international, influence as well. Which
yes,
is
especially
really
the American influence.
Right.
You find those big celebrities in America are also drug users themselves, or they are drinking alcohol heavily. And as Prof has put it, even the parents themselves who are coming to seek for assistance are also drinking. It's not once or twice. I've had a client tell me that I think you are admitting the wrong person, because that person who has brought me in has more problems than even I. The mother, if you ask, this mother has alcohol, ask her, and she's here. She has some alcohol in the car, and she was drinking alcohol, and it's not just any alcohol, it's whiskey, and she was drinking it in the car as we were coming. So we have not been very good when it comes to modeling as people who are supposed to offer the directions. And I think even if we stand on rooftops and tell the young people that it is wrong to do drugs, but we are doing it ourselves, then it doesn't make any sense. So I think what we need to do is to look at how to have a shift in the whole way that we approach the issue. What is it that we can do to change the minds of young people? There's something we call pseudo-stupidity. You look at a packet of cigarettes. Of course, it has the warning that if you do this, this is what is likely to happen.
But people ignore that.
But many young people believe that bad things can only happen to other people.
And it's not just young people, right?
And it's not just young people, even us.
Yeah.
Because we know what is right and we know what is wrong. But you'll find many times we'll do things that will sabotage our success. So why do we do this? Because we believe we are immune. We will not be affected by it. And another thing, when people get addicted, they will still engage, because one of the key indicators of addiction is that continuous use of the drug, even when you know what the consequences will be. You know you will get sacked, you know you're going to lose your family, you are going to lose your health, the doctors are warning you. You know you need to stop, but again, you are not able to stop because...
That's why I was asking
yes.
you, are there any psychological factors that contribute to
yes.
the development and even continuation
yes.
of addiction in
yes.
a person? Because yes, you're seeing all these warnings.
Yes.
You
yes.
know, lung cancer is there. It's one of the biggest killers in the world.
Yes.
But I still go on and I'll take a cigarette and smoke.
Yeah. So when we are looking at addiction in the treatment, we say addiction is a chronic relapsing disease with biological drivers, with psychological drivers, sociological drivers, and even spiritual drivers.
It's not just about influences.
So when you are looking at the psychological, you are looking at the experiences that people have gone through.
Right.
Some of them very traumatic experiences. And drug use can be used to shut off that past.
A coping mechanism.
Yes, I don't want to see an experience that I went through. It might have been abuse or a very difficult childhood upbringing, those very bad experiences.
So you drink alcohol to forget.
Becomes my peace, that when I drink alcohol, even if I'm lying down somewhere in a ditch, I'm perfectly okay because I've been able to shut off that. And even losing a number of years to addiction is also quite traumatic. Like in my case, I lost about 18 years of my life to addiction. That if you had to ask me, what do you do with the 18 years? I cannot be able to tell. So if I am still in active addiction, I want to shut that off. I don't want to see that past. But sadly, the society reminds me about how I have damaged, because we have a belief that if you make people feel bad about their addiction, then they will stop. But it works towards the reverse, that people tend to drink more because the drinking or the drug use helps them to not see, basically to self-medicate themselves out of those psychological issues, starting with the self-esteem, because drug use steals people's self-esteem. You tend to degrade yourself, and you want to be with people who are lower in class than yourself, and that's why you feel more comfortable in those changa dens, because that is where you feel that you belong. And in treatment, you say we have to look at how to help someone to reclaim that what was lost to addiction, which is basically that lost self-esteem and all those other things that have been disturbing the person psychologically. So when we are looking at the biological drivers, we are looking at the brain, the nature of the brain. There are people who may have some mental issues, mental disorders that may not be very pronounced, like maybe minor depression or even anxieties, and therefore the drug use is an attempt to self-medicate themselves. And then also that people who come from families where there is history of drug use have an inclination to get hooked to drugs if they attempt to do that. Like in my case, I come from a family where there was a lot of alcoholism, both maternal and paternal lineage. And therefore, when I began using, I fell in love with the drinks because that's something which was hardwired in me. And then when you are looking at the environment, we are looking at the social pressures, we are looking at where we were brought up, the people that we interact with all the time. So in treatment, we are looking at all those factors, be they biological, the environmental, the psychological, and even the spiritual. We are looking at the value system that sometimes we have issues in our personality that make us do things because we have compromised our values. Of course, we were brought up in families and in the church. We have a value system that was inculcated in each one of us. And when we do things that goes against what we believe in spirituality, honesty, being mindful about the well-being of other people, the compassion, stealing from other people, we have a conscience, and when that conscience is pricked, we are looking at how to shut off that conscience. And there is no better way than to take alcohol and drugs because we know we have done something wrong. We want to look at how to blind ourselves. So then it becomes a cycle. It becomes a cycle of shutting, you know, the feelings, and then you engage more in the same acts of behavior. Yes, that will tear you apart even more, and therefore, then you want to drink even or do drugs some more, so as to forget. Then you find yourself trapped in that cycle. Okay. Yes.
Let me get to Prof. We're going to take a short break, but before that, then there's the most abused narcotic as well, which is cannabis. The proliferation of cannabis in the country is significantly high, and especially among the young people right now. So people have found innovative ways of, taking this particular drug. Just give us an idea of the research that NACAD has done on the issue of cannabis in the country, and what does this mean for us, especially the young people here in this country? I know Nairobi has the highest use of cannabis here in the country. Just give us an understanding of that.
Thank you, Zainab. Cannabis is one of the narcotics. It's actually a hard drug. And we find that actually the use of cannabis has doubled in the country for the last 5 years.
From the last research to the new findings?
2017 research, the use of cannabis was less than 1%. Now it is doubled. And we find that more youth, aged between 15 and 24, and also 25 and 35 are smoking more of this cannabis. Initially Kenya used to be actually a transit country where some of these hard drugs were just passing through and not really used, within the country as much. But now it has become a destination. It has become a market. Now they found a market for such. And I think this is informed by the misconception that cannabis is not really a damaging drug. You know what David is saying. That there is that feeling that cannabis,
I think there was a debate just recently, I believe, maybe a year or 2 years ago, on regularization of cannabis because of its it has components that are healing or something like that. I don't know. I think even Kenya was part of the conversation of a wider global conversation.
That's right. But you see, these things are taken out of context. Because, when we are saying cannabis has got those, components which can either heal or can do whatever. We are not saying that if you smoke it, you are going to get ill. These are very different kind of things. And actually, most of the countries who are saying they can, legalize, they're not legalizing it for social use. Maybe for medicine or because of the medicinal value or whatever. But, in Kenya, we really don't believe in such. And you see, we are getting a lot of cannabis from Ethiopia. These roots. So
there's a huge market in Ethiopia
that's where they get this, that's the source. And it finds its way, through Marsabit, all the way through Isiolo, and then gets, to the heartland of the country. We are also getting a lot of cannabis from Tanzania. So you see, they found a market in Kenya. And you see, cannabis is actually very damaging, to the youth. And the messages which are also being sent out there by people who are seen to be in positions of authority, maybe politicians, when they stand out and they seem to glorify that, as David is saying, you'll find that now it becomes macho for the youth. It becomes something which is, to be
a good thing.
Yeah, a good thing. And I think this is really a serious problem, because if you even
so does that affect the campaign that you've put forth in terms of
course it is. It affects because if these people and they have a following, are glorifying this drug, then obviously it will affect the campaign. And the thing is that you are out there, you think you are doing this, but your kid may be the victim. Your brother, your sister may be the victim. It is very important to look at it this way, because at the end of the day, and it is there scientifically proven that these are damaging drugs. These drugs are damaging. And, corruption also plays a role. Because how would these drugs pass through? Of course, our borders are porous. But I would imagine that if you are going through like 10, 15, police, roadblocks, and these drugs still see through to the country, there must be something wrong. And we must say it very, very, very candidly.
So what is NACAD as an authority really doing about this?
Now, what we are doing is that we are doing a public education to the public, so that we can also have the public, give a public relevant information. We are also saying that the youth should be trained to say no to these drugs. That is, what we call life skills. The capacity to say this is right, this is wrong. And this must start from the very low, very low age. Because when you look at our studies, we are seeing these problems starting from the primary school to secondary school. By the time these kids are going to the university, they are already hooked. So that capacity to say no is very important. And we are saying that we must also be responsible. If you are in a position of authority, like a policeman, like a chief, assistant chief, or whatever, then you must not allow this to happen. You must not allow this to happen. Right. Because what would you say, and I will give an example, Zainab. If I am the assistant chief of a particular location or chief, is it, or even an OCS for that matter, is it possible for these drugs and these illicit brews to exist there, and I am sleeping there every day, I'm waking up every day, and I don't know? It is really not possible, unless there is some corruption taking place. And it is obvious, you see police vehicles passing through the bars every now and then, every evening, a particular designated time. What are they passing to do there? What is it that they are passing there to do? And this is obvious. I mean, it's an obvious thing.
And we'll come back to the issue of regulation, because I know we have the Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances
Act of 1994.
Yes, and by the way, it was, I think there was some changes, and it was gazetted last year.
That's right.
So we'll come back and talk about that. Okay. Let's take that short break here on AM Live. Talk to us. The hashtag, as always, is AM Live NTV at NTV Kenya. Zainab Sumal will be back in a short while. Stay with us.
Bluebird peanut butter, made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with Bluebird peanut butter. Available in 200 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Buy a pack today.
Talk, we came to ball. Let's get straight to it. Ready for whatever. We gon' ride. Line them up. Let's go toe to toe. Tell them pick a side. Put in work. We don't play no games. Watch it running high. Savage mode. We gon' keep it G. Yeah, you know the vibe. When it's meal time, who gon' tell my dogs we can't eat? Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a threat.
Get the Ballin' Twister box for only $7.50. NBA, KFC, balling all day.
Have you filed your 2022 income tax returns? Avoid the last-minute rush. Log on to itax.kra.go.ke and file your return today. Kenya Revenue Authority. Tulipe ushuru tujitegemee.
Safaricom Business is enabling organizations to connect, protect, enable, and transform their businesses by leveraging technology and innovation.
Through technology, we've been able to communicate, keep records, store our data, reach our customers, run our logistics. The future for both Space and Style and Safaricom looks quite promising. We are now looking to go into, digital selling to expand and improve our services, and also ensure that our factory and manufacturing processes are actually quite sustainable.
Secure Fiber offers your business a fast, dependable and secure fiber internet connection. Visit www.business.safaricom.co.ke to explore our range of plans tailored to meet your business needs.
I see you decided to go to a clinic in Israel so no one gets in your way, am I right? You're getting pregnant there, are you? I wonder who the father would be.
That's none of your business.
Actually, it is.
That's a crime, It's a crime. Don't you even see how serious this is?
Misha, throw her out of the
Mom,
room!
please, at least you could be. I'm begging you, Anna, leave us. Go away.
Your tears don't affect me anymore. You'd better get out.
No way, Dennis.
I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's over.
2 out of 3 Kenyan parents felt that they don't spend enough quality time with their kids. You can help change this by giving a generous voice to Storytime. Visit our library of homegrown audio stories at cadbury.africa and make Storytime sweeter.
I see. You've decided to go to a clinic in Israel so no one gets in your way, am I right? You're getting pregnant there, are you? I wonder who the father would be.
That's none of your business.
Actually, it is.
That's a crime, you know. It's a crime. Don't you even see how serious this is?
Misha, throw her out of the
Mom,
room!
please, at least you could be. I'm begging you, Anna, leave us. Go away.
Your tears don't affect me anymore. You'd better get out.
No way, Dennis.
I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's over.
Bluebird peanut butter, made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with Bluebird peanut butter. Available in 200 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Buy a pack today.
Women across the world really go through a lot of problems during their menses. It's a big problem, especially for poverty-stricken Kenyans. A girl in the slum or a girl from a poor background will miss at least 4 days of school during her menses because she cannot afford the pads. Others use unethical or crude means to take care of their menses. So you find a girl using dirty clothes or pieces of mattresses, which of course come along with infections. So we need even our education system. The sexual education or the sex education that you talk about, one of the topics should be menstruation, and to both boys and girls. The way we talk about when COVID came and it was a big issue, Ebola is happening in other countries, the big issue here, period poverty needs to be taken as such. I, Dorcas Muga Odumbe, will be attending the Changing Cycles event at Safari Park Hotel on July 15th. The event is sponsored by Nation Media Group. I hope you will join us. Kindly purchase your tickets at kenyabars.com. Let's join efforts in ending period poverty in Kenya.
All right, welcome back to the program as we continue with this conversation on issues of alcohol and drugs and substance abuse in the country. A report that was released by NACADA mid-month last month talks about the prevalence of cannabis, which stands at 1.9% among Kenyans aged between 15 to 65, which is about 518,000 people, while the use among the ages of 15 to 24 is 2.7%, showing that 1 in every 26 males and 1 in every 333 females are currently using cannabis in the country. So this is a growing problem that the government is sort of trying to manage. And David, when you look at those numbers, those are quite startling. At some point, there's a projection that cannabis might actually even surpass alcohol, perhaps in terms of substance abuse. What do you make of this? And then there's a question of now the regulations that are in place. Do you think we lack enough regulations to govern how this substance is used in the country and how it gets into the country?
Just going back to cannabis, when I was sharing with you my journey,
right?
By third form, my peers were laughing at me. You are still smoking cigarettes. That's for first formers. We are now on the big cigarette, cannabis. Okay. By the way, by the time I'm getting to Form 1, there are others who have started in Standard 7 or Standard 6, because that's we were going up to Standard 7. So regulations are many.
We have enough.
We have more than enough. The problem is there's no enforcement. And one of the big reasons is what Prof was alluding to, of the corruption. Because technically, best practices, if you check other jurisdictions, why was NACADA started? They should then be having an enforcement arm which is separate from the normal law enforcement. So because to help them carry out their mandate. But then when you come back to cannabis, in fact, that program you're talking about, I think I was on one of them on NTV some years back, on this legalization and what. Now, this thing I'm talking about of enforcement, not enforcement, the message not reaching the ground. My take is, because like today we are saying there are new ways of taking cannabis, cookies, blah, blah, blah. Those things were there in my time.
Oh, they were there?
They were there in my time.
So these are not new innovative ways that people are actually using?
Right. I am very lucky. God blessed me. My body only had tolerance for alcohol, tobacco, mira.
But many cannot say the same.
Cannabis took me so bad. I tried once, 2, 3 times. I didn't go. But again, as Paul was saying, his is 18 years, mine was 27 years of my life. There's a gap. Until you look at it in a different way. Because what I say, Paul is recovering, I'm recovering, and we're so many. I say addicts, we read backwards. We start with the practicals. So you get your CA, certificate in alcohol, then you do your BA, bachelor in alcohol, and I'm using alcohol to represent the other drugs as well, so depend, drug of choice.
Right.
You come up to your master's. Now, master's is the highest you can go in practicals. And then you get into treatment. That's where you do your PhD. Now, if you get hold of the program, and the program simply means whether it's inpatient, outpatient, a combination of both, whatever, it simply means a program to give you the tools to stay sober a day at a time.
Right.
Okay? That's what, if you get the program, you get your PhD. Like I am David Ogod, PhD. PhD simply means proper heavy drinking. Now, the issue here is this. Why aren't this message getting down? Because again, if you look at other jurisdictions, what is the biggest barrier to people getting help and their families? It's that stigma you are talking about.
Right.
Because the picture, and again, I'll use alcohol to present the other drugs,
right,
of an alcoholic, nobody wants. In fact, there have been studies in the US when they were looking at people who are detested, groups who are these the subcultures which are detested most in society. Imagine alcoholics ranked lower than pedophiles. Pedophiles have more respect
than
alcoholics. That's how bad that stigma. And this then is why somebody doesn't want to agree there's an addict. Just the other day, we finally had one of the recovering alcoholics, and Madhu, appointed to the board of NACADA, deputy chair of NACADA. Now, we've been crying for this for years, that on the board there should be at least 4 male, female, alcoholic, recovering, male, female, narcotic, recovery. Then in the management, if you have Prof, the CEO, you have a recovering deputy, or vice versa. Because in the whole country, just like in the family, then to the society, then the whole country, you are either addicted or affected. All of us. Because one addict, you terrorize approximately 60 people. Close, those are close, before it expands outward.
Because what were we talking about? 1 in every, what, is it 26? 1 in 6 Kenyans aged between 15 and 65 is the majority of the population. It's projected to be at least 1.
So if 1 is affecting...
So that's a whole community.
It's the whole,
right,
all over. If it's drunk driving, it's drugs in sports, it's drugs in the school, it's drugs in the society, it's affecting HIV rates and other STDs, it's affecting domestic violence, crime, everything. Because who takes drugs? Humans. So in every human endeavor, there is, when Paul is talking about in the media, I am one of the first casualties. In fact, when I came to do my first article, Nation, I was under supervision of then Macharia Gaido, who was also my senior in Lenana. And by the time I'm coming to do a second article, I had had a relapse. So issues start, and no media house, and those days they want so many media houses, they know you. So they don't want to give you. So what I'm saying is, how do you fight stigma? It's Paul, and remember when you were saying, what do I want as my title when I came for this program? I said recovering alcoholic.
Right.
So that I am coming out naked, this is me.
This is
Paul
you.
talked about suicide. I had suicide attempts in India, where I went to study, never stepped into a class for 4 years. I went for a 3-year course. ETC, my parents were well-known people, so that there's that huge embarrassment. My mom was a minister. I'm storming into her office looking like a street boy. I want money. Until my mom learned that secretary used to be given 4 envelopes. Envelope 4 had the most amount of money, and so the secretary would assess me. Because I would walk in, the APs there want to stop me. I'm saying, that lady I'm going to see, is it your mother or mine? Ebu touch me again, and you will see between in Northeastern Mandera and Moyale, which is hotter, because you will be posted. So then they would say, watch I. Let his mother deal.
Yeah.
So I burst in, the secretary is telling me, so the mother
with
learned.
that.
Now, come back to fast forward, sobriety. I also do counseling. We run some programs, etc. And there are so many others.
How difficult was it for you to come to that self-realization that I had a problem, that I have a problem, that I need this addressed?
Yes.
And I think maybe perhaps a lot of people don't come to that self-realization and believe like, look, I will take perhaps 1 bottle of beer, I will take 2 glasses of whether it is whiskey or wine in a day. And I'm not addicted, I'm just winding up my day. But that perhaps could be addiction.
Now, remember I asked, when I said when I came out, I did that asking, what is alcoholism? I got to rehab, I can say it's God, by the time I got to rehab. Because I used to disappear for days, come back, my wife doesn't know where to find me, my kids don't know where to find me. So I came back one of those days, staying in Langata, I told my wife, let's go to the neighborhood, buy, check in. And then I ended up drinking up to morning. And when we get back, I told my wife, don't enter bed. We're going to rehab. And she thought it was a joke. And that's how I ended up in rehab. I claimed some bus tickets my mother had paid for like a year before. I said, don't give him, if he comes, he's going to this destination, give him his tickets and the wife. That's how I got there. And in 14 days, I learned what my problem was. I learned alcoholism, what it meant, blah, blah, blah. At a facility costing 200 bob a day, pit latrine, you eat meat once a week, a small portion, that's 200 bob full board. There are people, my parents had paid 1.2 M in the 90s. It didn't work. My drink only got worse. And that's why when I came out, that's why I actually entered this business, quote unquote. And when I came out, I asked that question. Now today, you've heard Paul talking ETC, because if you ask, if we were 10 of us here, and you ask us, what is alcoholism? You'll get 10 different answers. And you've introduced us as experts. So the viewer is wondering, now, we are now more confused than when we watch this program. So I can only talk for the program which worked for me. Because you see, and again, I'll use alcohol.
It's not a one size fits all.
No, 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 no. Here is the basic thing. If you define your problem wrong, the solution you will get is wrong. For example, and no offense to Prof, because Prof just came to Nakada, the name he found was already there. National Campaign Against Alcohol, one thing, drugs, a different thing. So even the name Nakada is telling people alcohol is not a drug. It is alcohol.
So you feel like that needs to be changed, sort of, so that we view things differently.
Because alcohol does not cause alcoholism.
It's a drug.
It's a drug, yes. And it does not cause alcoholism. Because if it did, then everybody who drank alcohol would end up alcoholic, which is not the case. My dad drinks alcohol. Okay, he stopped when he was 90. God willing, this year he'll be 97.
At 90.
Okay. Yeah. But he drank almost up to 89, 90.
All right.
My kid brothers, one's an aeronautical engineer, the other's an architect, my sister, they all drink. But how comes me? And you had Paul saying it runs in families. So if your definition is wrong on what is going to be the treatment, how do you handle?
Okay.
So you go to this rehab, they're telling you it's this. You go to another rehab, you have an underlying psychological problem. You go to another rehab, then there are people saying it's witchcraft, then there are people saying it's this. So again, the 100 will answer, which one do you choose?
Okay.
So as I say, I can only talk for the one which worked for me, which I assume is the one which worked for Paul. I know it's the one which worked for Ann Madhu and all the other hundreds, or if not thousands of recovery. Now, my issue is, why do we not use our stories? And that's why I simply tell stories. How I started, what it did to me, how I stopped. Paul just gave a synopsis of his, the same. So that somebody outside there, it will click. Because that's how, even when I got to the rehab, and I went for my first session, and people introduce themselves, or first they introduce themselves before you do. So somebody saying, I'm John, I'm an addict. So I asked myself, what have I done? So when it came to my turn, I said, I'm David from Nairobi. I'm here for 1 week to be taught how to drink like a gentleman so that I don't spend my kids' fees or the house rent. And after that, I'll go back, but I'll pray for you guys, but I'm not like you. So still I refuse, because that denial, Paul was trying to say, but the way it comes, the alcohol now ends up in your mind as being your best friend. So you see, even in the media, when we write the habit of alcoholism, it cannot be a habit, and alcoholism, which you're then saying it's a disease, for those who come from disease concept, which is
it can't
me.
be a disease habit.
You pick. It's either a habit, like a habit,
or it's a
picking
disease,
your
illness,
nose, or it's a disease.
All right.
You see? So that definition is what allowed me to understand, because a fellow came in and said almost the same thing I said. And then I realized, essentially, I can drink, but I cannot drink safely. It is loss of control, and your body now needs it when you take it. That's why people say, but why are you calling yourself alcoholic? You haven't drank 23 years. You are an ex-alcoholic or former. If I'm an ex or former, like when I broke my leg, I couldn't run, I couldn't ride, I couldn't do what, then my leg healed. It then means if I'm a former alcoholic, I can go back to drinking the way I used to drink before I crossed.
So that's why you're still in recovery?
Yes, it's a day
at a time.
Because I cannot drink alcohol. What I say is, everybody has a trailer. Paul's trailer is called Paul. Mine is number plate. Mine is called David. That's my number plate. If you start drinking, continue drinking long enough. If you have that genetic predisposition, you drink long enough to trigger the disease you were born with. It kills the brakes on the trailer. So when you stop drinking, the trailer has AI. It goes and parks on top of a 90-degree slope. 40 foot, fully loaded. If I have a relapse and enter that trailer, because it's still there until the day you bury me, is the day you say, that one now will never drink again. Now, if I relapse, which means I enter that trailer, it's coming down the hill, 40 foot, fully loaded with no brakes. And those brakes will never come back. So the only option is to leave. And that's why we say it is a disease, which then it's the only disease which tells you you don't have it. So until we can get to one definition, and then bring programs which tackle that, we're all over the place. And the best way to fight that stigma, which is the biggest barrier, stories of addicts, so that we normalize that it's a disease, so that if you see, and also what are the whatevers that show you signs that you're headed.
So there's a lot of information that needs to be disseminated to people, a lot of information that needs to be defined and changed and simplified for people to be able to understand.
What are we presenting
to the people?
To the people. To distinct. Why is there more stigma, more mess, with all the resources which were not there 23 years ago?
All right, let's hear from Paul on the same issue. Do you agree? And also then the issue of access to treatment and rehabilitation facilities. Do we have enough in the country? Do we need more? David has talked about the fact that, you know, his parents spent what 1.2 million at some
In
rehabilitation facility. I think that was outside the country, inside the country.
Yeah.
So then you can imagine, then he goes to a different one, which he pays 200 shillings per day. But still, do we have information on access to this kind of treatment facilities? Do we need more? Do we need more research?
I would say we are still far away from there. Though we have made strides. When we started, I remember we used to have 3 treatment centers here in Nairobi. There were only 3, one in Homa Bay.
That was back in...
One in Mombasa and one in Malindi. That was around the year 2006.
Right.
Today, currently, we have quite a number of them. Those who are registered with NACADA, they are
about 150.
About 150.
Private.
Across the country?
Yeah, across the country.
Right.
But still, the problem is huge. And sadly, there are quite a number of people who are not aware that there are places where people can be taken for treatment. And that there are also quite a number of people who may not be willing to take their people to treatment for issues of stigma, because there's a perception that drug treatment facilities are for people who are psychotic, people who have mental ailments, severe mental ailments. And therefore, they don't want to come out. They do not want to be known that they have someone because of the stigma. People hide people who are struggling with addiction. We say it's a disease of shame, not just for the person who they use, but also even for the family members. So I would say a lot of sensitization needs to be done.
Right.
We appreciate the fact that you are able to give us this forum so that we can be able to talk to our communities. And we are trusting that we will be able to engage more people to also come out like my friend David is saying, so that we can be able to destigmatize, to sanitize the minds of our communities. That when you find people doing this, it's because they are in the grip of this disease of addiction. And therefore, what you need to do is to take them for treatment. When you're looking at the alcohol policy, the 2010 Alcoholic Drinks Control Act says alcoholism is a disease. And when you find someone who has a disease, then you need to take them to hospital. Alcoholics and drug addicts are people who have been struggling with understanding themselves. And because of that failure to understand what are the key driving factors into what they are doing, they stagnate. They continue to do the things they do because they are not fully aware. The society is trying to understand someone who cannot be able to understand himself.
Let me ask you this, because we need to sort of nip this in the bud. People become alcoholic because they started at a younger age. Do you think the communication is effective when you're talking to young people? You know, when you sit down and tell them, you know, alcohol is bad and what and this, and if you take cigarettes, you're going to get lung cancer. Probably that doesn't get into their minds. Do we need to shift the way we communicate with young people?
Yes, I think it is important to do that. Because quite a number of them are fully aware about the consequences. But again, like I said, they believe it cannot catch up with them. They believe this is a problem for other people. Even when you look at something like, we talk about HIV and AIDS, lifestyle diseases, diabetes and all that. But we still do engage in eating a lot of chips and whatever. People will engage in irresponsible sex, even adults like us, even when we are fully aware about what the consequences will be. And I think it is important for us to search and find out what we can do, whether we need to change the approach, the communication, especially which is being sent out there to the young people, and to be able to demystify some of the myths, especially that which is coming from the Western world, like America. Like you mentioned about the case of young people. Wanting to smoke cannabis because there is that medicinal property in cannabis. But what they are not aware is that what these governments are advocating for, or those people are advocating for that, are saying we need to have this cannabis taken to a laboratory. They are going to isolate the dangerous chemicals, remove the THC, which is the addictive component in cannabis, and maybe synthesize something that can be medicinal, because cannabis also has some elements that are able to kill pain, to prevent vomiting, feelings of nausea, especially for people who may have terminal ailments. And that is what can be tapped, because everything has a good part and a bad part. But when you're looking at the smoked cannabis, like Professor said, you see that is what is damaging young people when they hear that message. And I think where we could be failing is possibly the message that we are giving to the young people, and to be able to break it down in a language that they can be able to understand, so that we can be able to change their whole attitude, their mindset, the mindset of the young people.
Okay. And Prof, finally, as you make your final remarks as well, what is NACADA doing about this, especially because you have these programs and campaigns, and you've just entered office the other day. Are you changing or shifting the way that you're engaging, especially young people, when it comes to these particular matters?
Yeah, thank you, Zainabu. As Paul and David have alluded, actually, addiction is a disease, and it has been agreed internationally that this is a disease. These are people who have either been tricked, either way to get into drugs. The people we should really be going for are the drug barons, the traffickers.
But that has been a big fight in Kenya, which has
been
never
a big fight, and we must now, and we know now, Zainabu, we have the political will from the top, the president, the deputy president, and maybe, I'm not saying initially we didn't have the political will, but I think it is high time we went after these people, because they are really destroying our youth. And I must say that it is very expensive for one to get treatment in Kenya, a rehab. Rehabs are very expensive. Actually, you'll have to for you to get to a rehab, you may need over 100,000 shillings. That's the least.
You talked about 150 rehabilitation centers
which are private. Which are private. Then we have 5 government public
across the country.
I mean, but now we are having the counties coming up with the rehabs. We are telling them, you are collecting money for alcohol outlets.
From the licensing.
For the licensing. Right. Use this money to set up rehabs. Where are you taking this money? Don't use this money to pay salaries for people or to do other things. This is seen money you are getting, okay? Seen money you are getting. Use this money to set up rehabs. And we are saying we have a new approach where we must strengthen enforcement and compliance. The compliance bit has been lax. We must strengthen it. Okay. And again, we must also bring in the community. The communities must be involved. That's why we are coming up with our community engagement framework, where we are saying the communities should be, we are going to bring the communities together, empower them, train them, so that they can now take that as their problem. And from there they can now give us intelligence, they can come up with the plans of action, and they can do all these things. Right. Zainab, I attended a pass-out parade of former addicts, former recovering addicts right. in Githuguri the other day. And I was very impressed. There's an organization there which is known as Say No to Drugs. And they have local solutions for local problems. Right. There was a pass-out parade of more than 300, 400, 500, these recovering addicts. Right. Actually, it was graced by the second lady, Pastor Dorcas. And I could see, if we can do that, why can't we replicate this? Because it's very expensive.
And make it national.
Yeah, and make it national. Okay. We replicate it, and I think these are the solutions we must look for. Local solutions for local problems.
All right. Thank you, Prof. I think we have to end it there because of time. I wish we did have more time, but hopefully we can be able to get another opportunity in this platform to have more conversations and a wider as well engagement on how to handle this matter. But thank you, Professor John Muteti, Acting CEO, NACADA. Paul Kirungu is a counseling psychologist and also addiction professional. He's a trainer in peer recovery support, as well as David Ogot, who in this context literally just came here as a recovering alcoholic to give his journey and experience in that, in that journey as well. And of course, just some of his expertise on how we can manage this as a country. I thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in this morning. And this is where we wrap it up. I see a couple of tweets here will be, let's engage online. The hashtag, as always, is AM Live NTV. Your World is coming up shortly with Winnie Lubembe. Stay tuned. My name is Zainab Ismail. Have yourself a good morning. And I can see the t-shirt on Ogot's saying, and I don't want to miss that, President Uhuru, which is former President Uhuru, declared alcoholism a disease. If he can get it, I can get it, you can get it. And then it cuts across all the other drugs that are being abused in the country. But that's the message today. So let's have a good day and good morning.